Welcome to the AP Cast with Phil and Alex. Let's get it cracking. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AP Cast episode 3, 2023 in review, and on to what's next. Welcome to the AP Cast. I'm pretty sure I said that already, but who knows what the hell. I'm your host, Phil. With me riding shotgun is the homeboy, Alex Monfrada.
Yeah, and welcome to the AP cast. I'm gonna say it a third time. How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing fantastic. I'll be doing a lot better once there's some clarity as to which direction our beloved franchise is taken after the unknown and turmoil of Black Monday.
Yeah, man, a lot of question marks out there for sure.
A lot of question marks, a lot of things to look at, and a lot of important details to consider. So before we get to the future, let's take a look at the past. 8 straight games, the Silver and Black have dominated the Denver Broncos, a team that we previously used to have all the struggles in the world with when certain somebody was out here.
Yeah, certain somebody. You talking about Peyton?
You hit two. Hit Peyton, all
The good
swat,
Peyton.
horse face, you name it.
Yeah, the Peyton that we worry about, not the Peyton that we're glad is in Denver right now.
Man, as one dude, I wanted to. It's funny. I've never seen a guy run the complete gambit and come a full 360 in a coaching year. Usually you'll come. It'll be a 180. It'll be a 270 and look like it's coming all the way back, but stop just short. This man started off the season pissing off everybody with talking shit about the previous coach and how he couldn't coach. Came out the gates laying eggs, getting blown out. Should have had the NFL points record set on him, but somehow through the grace of God, somebody made a call and told Mike McDaniel to call off the dogs.
Yeah, for sure.
From that point, they turned it around, and this motherfucker's over here about to be on the verge of looking like a genius because the Chiefs are collapsing, and somehow, some way, this team that had previously gotten blown out by 50 is in danger of fucking around and being in first place in the AFC West. And then came a level of brilliance, a stroke of genius that was probably part of the most asinine, horrific looking language, thought process, bullying, trying to strong arm one of your own players, the best player, the quarterback of your team, for the money that you've already promised him.
Yeah, go on, talk your shit.
And in the midst of being close to a playoff run, when you were still in it, came up with the brilliant idea to bench him and call it a coach's decision so that he didn't get hurt and his guarantees didn't kick in and you could cut it.
I mean, it's certainly a coach's decision, that's for damn sure. But yeah.
After you told him this was what you were going to do, and the NFLPA has already got involved. I'm like, how fucking stupid can you be? This is a decision. This is some Brandon Staley is somewhere shedding a tear.
Yeah, man. Hey, you know what's crazy about this too? All the first round picks that Denver gave up to get both Russ and Peyton.
All of that shit. The boneheadedness. This shit was so bad that even AP felt bad for Russell when he was talking about the Broncos situation. Then when they said, nah, talk about Steady, I mean, he all but said, man, fuck him. We about to run these fools. Yeah, ain't nobody worried about Stiddy as quarterback. But what's going on with Russ? Yeah, that's a tough situation over there, but that's all. Oh, we're not. Oh, we talked about the Bronco. Oh yeah, fuck them. But
Yeah, man, it's certainly a decision, no doubt about that.
I mean, wow. That seems. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old, and after you get old, shit like this starts happening. But I seen some real dumb ass shit going on in the NFL.
Going on
In the
AFC West.
in the AFC West. Some pure dumbassery.
Bro, I mean, it's insane when you really think about it. Brandon Staley and Josh McDaniels in the same division, and a new guy comes along who's actually quite well established and is like, well, hold my beer, watch this.
And a hold my beer off for who can make this of the year. And I'll be damned if these shitheads aren't really trying to win it.
Yeah. No doubt about that. And it's funny because, Chargers can get rid of Staley as they did. Raiders can get rid of McDaniels as they did. But if you're Denver, I mean, you're tied to the hip with Sean Payton for the foreseeable future after what you gave up to get him.
I don't know if that's the case. You would, because one could have made that same argument for Russell Wilson, but we're getting ready to see that that's clearly not the case.
I mean, that's true. That's true enough. Well, I hope it's the case in any event.
With the way that Kareem Jackson was not Kareem Jackson. Was it Kareem Jackson?
It was Kareem Jackson.
Yeah. Was out here headhunting for the Broncos early, like Bountygate was still off and popping.
I didn't even think of that. That's great.
I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Like, is this motherfucker think this is the old days where you can just come in here and start gooning up? I'd be like, nah, bro, that's not. We don't do things that way anymore. The Raiders would be on top of the world if they could still do that.
Yeah, no, for real, man, for real.
Nobody did gooning better than the Raiders.
And I know. But you love to see it, though.
Yeah, I wish more problems on them. Keep having ones to solve, and I hope you fail at it miserably over and over again.
Keep the streak going, because the Raiders were playing something on Sunday, and that was for the streak to go on. And it's not just a streak. It's not just 8 wins in a row versus Denver, which is obviously a great thing versus a division rival, no matter how you slice it. But it's that they have not once dropped a game to the Denver Broncos since becoming the Las Vegas Raiders. Not one game.
Nor should they. Because fuck them. That's why.
Exactly. And you love to see it. Even if it costs them a few spots in the draft, who gives a fuck?
That spot? Fuck that.
No, exactly.
We're gonna have to trade up to get where you wanted to get to anyway. At this point, what's a couple spots?
We're not. That's loser mentality anyway. Dropping a game versus a division rival just to move up 3 spots or so, like, that's loser mentality, man.
It's loser mentality to be worried about draft pick selection when you have an opportunity to make the playoffs. It's been amazing how many times I've heard people say they call games meaningless because they fell short of making an attempt to hit the playoffs. And not only did they fall short, but they fell short because the referees decided to award the Colts an extra opportunity to win the game when they clearly had lost the momentum.
Hey, what you just said is the culture that the Raiders have been lacking, that has trickled down to the fans, that they're teetering on playoffs, and the odds might be a little against them, but they're very much still alive, and fans are already packing it in, talking about who should we get in the draft, and there's still 10 games left in the season or whatever, and that's a product of culture, man, that fans have just not seen. And we'll talk about this a little later, I'm sure, but that's one reason for AP, man, because he's changing the culture out there, and he's saying, hey, it doesn't matter. Even if we're officially eliminated, we're still going to kick the asses out of our fucking division rivals, man, just as it's going to be from now on out. And that's the culture that fans need to experience. And then, eventually they can just drop that mindset because they'll be accustomed to something else.
This man changed the culture in the building. And I'll be generous, and I'll say it took him all of potentially 36 hours to completely turn around the culture, the direction, the energy, the execution, the
Mm-hmm.
attention to detail.
Yeah, man, you're not wrong at all.
And because I was going to say, initially I'd said a week, in 1 week, but honest and truthfully, it was faster than that.
Oh yeah, it was much faster. It was much
Was
faster.
much faster than a week. It was probably about, and to say 36 hours is probably it's still not doing it enough justice. I think that the moment the to get come into the job with unanimous support from your players, I was like, that is insane to me. And there's so much that this man has done for this organization as an interim coach that I truly think that people are not valuing anywhere near as much as they should.
Yeah, and I don't think fans really understand how much or how much balls it takes from a head coach to come in, and you're very much still alive in the playoff race, and if you're AP, you're trying your hardest to win every game. Draft position, you are not even close to thinking about. You're thinking about, I'm going to win every game as much as I can, and I'm going to take this job. I'm going after what I believe is mine. And you come in, and within the first 3 hours of being named the interim head coach, you say, yeah, the guy that was brought in to be our starting quarterback, I'm not going to start him. I'm going to start the rookie that we drafted in the 4th round. That's how it's going to be. I believe that is the best chance we have to win ball games. That is a ballsy decision. And if you're a head coach of a team, man, you're trying to change a culture, you need to be able to make ballsy decisions. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a fucking massive part.
And for all of the he's never done this, he's never done that before, what people fail to realize is that man is a champion. He was a champion as a player, as a middle linebacker, going up against Tom Brady in his heyday with Randy Moss, and they beat them. Ended the first threat to an undefeated season since 1972. Said this man knows football better than most of everybody you think might possibly know football. So now is he gonna be on the
Not
chopping block?
underselling what happened in that Super Bowl. I'm obviously not going to say this is Antonio Pierce that single-handedly put the team on his back and won. But what I am going to say is Antonio Pierce was not just a guy on that team. He was a captain on that team. He was a leader, a legitimate leader on that team.
With all the Hall of Famers, Strahan. He was Strahan's captain.
Yeah, no, exactly. Strahan's not just the Hall of Famer either. I mean, he's one of the best to ever do it on the defensive side of the ball.
OC, Tuck, all of them.
Oh yeah.
So
But that's Pierce, man.
You can that man oozes leadership. You can see it. Just he is the alpha wolf male, and you can see it just by how everybody addresses him. See, the leader of the pack, everybody has a certain greeting when they address him. And when you look at how the baddest of bad dudes on the Raiders walks up to Pierce, it is a certain way. It is a certain way, with all the jubilance, still recognizing who's the man around here.
No, for sure, man. And if you listen to the players, and it's not just Max Crosby saying like, yeah, I prefer this guy, and it's not just Devontae Adams saying, who I'd vote for the team. It's not just guys like sticking up for their coach and all that shit, but it's a guy like Josh Jacobs who he has a good chance of just going, whether it's for the team doesn't want to re-sign him or he doesn't want to re-sign with the team. Both very possible options. But a guy like Josh Jacobs saying, if Antonio Pierce remains the coach, I'm probably going to try my hardest to come back. Like that's a big fucking sentiment.
And what he's done for every man on that roster. I mean, the guys that you thought couldn't play got some PT. Not only did they get some PT, they started contributing, and some of them started being featured. Malcolm Kuntz, and I'm not going to solely attribute that to AP, because Patrick Graham has done a hell of a job with this defense. And the fact that he's getting head coach considerations from in-division rivals only speaks to the quality and the caliber of his coaching.
Yeah, I mean, actually, this is something that I've been thinking about, and I wanted to address it when we do this week's episode of the AP Cast. Is that we are seeing guys across the NFL. I mean, guys on the Raiders coaching staff get interest from teams across the NFL. You know, Antonio Pierce and Patrick Graham and Champ Kelly, and that's one thing in itself that we never really see as just people that follow the Raiders. You know, support the Raiders, whatever. But not just that. It's at the point where we're thinking of these guys and we're thinking, I don't want to lose Champ Kelly. You know, I don't want to lose Antonio Pierce. I don't want to lose Patrick Graham. Like, stay away from our coaches. When's the last time we thought that about our coaches and general managers collectively? Like, I can't remember.
It never, because, or at least you and I would not be old enough to feel that way. There are some in Raider Nation that can remember the good old days back when they had John and Tom and all of that going on, and Al was in his prime. But in terms of recently, never. And I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I was kind of what you were saying, that the fact that we have other teams interested in our coaching staff and the guys that came on in and took over, it just goes to show you how good our coaches really truly are. And what kills me is how fast I hear a lot of these guys in Raider Nation ready to just cast these dudes to the side for the great shiny new thing that's coming in with all the bells and whistles, and he's going to be able to do the same thing that he did at Michigan for our program. And we're going to give him the opportunity to start brand new, tear everything down, then rebuild it, rather than give Antonio Pierce an opportunity to build on the foundation that he's already established and put in place. I think that with a full off-season OTAs, introduction, draft process, all of his guys coming in, seeing the changes that he would make, that this gentleman would have a much better idea of what it takes to win in this league than anybody gives him credit for.
Oh, I totally agree. And, you know, I want to personally get into the Jim Harbaugh thing. I'll save that for a little later. But I do have a lot to say on that. But for now, I'm just going to say that, you know, the NFL and college is very different for very, very many reasons. Not just how the game is played, not just the rules of the game, but there's so many different aspects of being a coach. For example, in college, arguably more important than actually coaching is recruiting. And that's obviously that doesn't fucking matter in the NFL one bit, because that's not a thing. If anything, it's a general manager that would even fall on. But anyway, Antonio Pierce is showing that at the NFL level very quickly with guys that aren't his, like we talked about last week and probably weeks before, that he can do this and he doesn't need his guys. And he's just, you know, Aiden O'Connell, for all intents and purposes, is not a great talent in any stretch of the imagination. And Antonio Pierce is winning games with him. And we've talked about, well, not us, but fans, they keep talking about, well, the Raiders are just beating, like, you know, the Jets, the Giants, and whoever they're beating, the Broncos. My God, how can you give them credit for these games? They're beating teams that they should be beating. And the number one thing good teams do to establish yourself as a good team is beat teams you are supposed to beat. The Raiders have not done that in 20-something years. They have not beaten teams consistently that they're supposed to beat. Why? Because they haven't been good teams. They haven't been coached well. They're doing that now. And fans are like, well, what are we supposed to say? You know, they're beating on these teams that we don't consider good. You're supposed to look at that and say, hey, they're taking care of business. Like, that's the number one thing you can ask for. Your team to take care of business, beat teams they should be beating. Raiders are doing that with Antonio Pierce. Raiders are doing that with Antonio Pierce very quickly, with the same team Josh McDaniels could not do it with the same team that, well, I guess just Josh McDaniels with the same team. But, you know, a lot of coaches that came before for the Raiders, they couldn't do it. Every coach that came before in the last 20-something years, they couldn't do it. Gruden might have been on the path to doing it, but you know how that worked out. Ultimately, he didn't because of how that ended. No coach has done it. Antonio Pierce is doing it. And people want to say, well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that it hasn't happened in probably most Raider fans' lifetime.
And it's not just all of that, but you have to look at how they're beating the bad team. When you play a bad team, you're supposed to usually beat a bad team by about 2 to 3 touchdowns, right? So they put up 30 points against the Giants right out of the gate. Up until that time, they hadn't broken 20. a linebacker coach with a rookie quarterback and a first-time offensive coordinator walked onto the field with the same team that Josh McDaniels couldn't put 20 up and put 30 up.
Yeah, and then doubled that in 1 week, like a month later.
Went to New York, or played the New York Jets, the top 5 defense in the league, and beat them.
Oh yeah.
Beat it with a rookie quarterback, one who the previous coach didn't even want to play because he set him up for failure so that he could put Jimmy G back in, and everybody would be like, "Oh, he's so much better than the rookie," which is pathetic.
Pathetic. But yeah, man.
And so decisions like that. Has it been perfect? No, he's learned on the job, but I challenge anybody to point to the same Antonio Pierce making the same mistake twice.
Can't be done. And of course it's not perfect. He started not just year 1, he started halfway through the season. This isn't something that you can mentally prepare for it, like a tragedy, if you will. I mean, it's not really a tragedy, but something like just out of left field like this. But you never can really actually prepare for it, because who is sitting there counting calendar saying this is going to happen and I'm going to step in and I need to know everything that's going on for this moment. Nobody's doing that, because first of all, they don't have the time to do that, but it's just not realistic.
Listen, I'm going to tell you something, young man, and don't you ever forget this. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
No, certainly.
And you can, and as much as you could say that, you and I, if you of all people, and I as well, in the particular line of work we have a clear-cut idea of what we believe that needs to happen in order for this team to be successful. It's very easy to see what's not working, so it's very easy to eliminate half of what it is that you need to do in order to be successful. Don't do that shit over there, because that shit is not working. Okay. So now that I know what not to do, let's take it and let's figure out what we can do. Work into your player's strength. Somehow, some way, I was born a goddamn genius, because nobody in the world that's ever coached the Raiders seemed to have been able to figure that fucking shit out to do what your players are best at.
And it's funny you say that, because I specifically remember at the Josh McDaniels press conference when they brought him in and, Mark Davis welcomed him. Mark Davis said that is the number one reason why he loved this fit, because he thought of Josh McDaniels as a guy who does that. So it's funny you say that.
It's incredible, earth-shattering, groundbreaking, and I've never been an NFL coach a day in my life. But that was easy. And so, in dealing with people and treating people like men, and earning respect, you would be able to lead a locker room full of men, because everybody would respect you in return. Also, earth-shattering, groundbreaking, incredibly cutting-edge philosophical content right there.
Yeah, the world wasn't ready for that one, man.
Right? Follow the golden rule. It's only been around since the beginning of time. But armed with that, you fall on Antonio Pierce's background, his ability to look at it from a different perspective. Instead of trying to attack the defense, he's seeing where the offense is weak and where they are strong, and what they need to do in order to be successful. And nobody knows what your offense needs to do in order to be successful, because he's the one that looks at it and sees how he would attack it every day.
Yeah, no, you're right. I was more so saying that, when you're the linebacker coach, what are you doing? What's your daily routine? You're more so focused on, how to do your fucking job and not how to do somebody else's job. Of course, in the meantime, you're thinking, well, I would do this differently, or I'd do that differently. And you might even see some things that, would change for the better, and what not to do, because you're seeing people do stuff that doesn't work. But what I'm trying to say is, like, when you're not the head coach, you're not devoting all those hours of your day pretending to be the head coach. You're focused on whatever the fuck your job is. And that's more so what I was getting at right there.
And so usually, in most cases, you would be right. But the linebacker is the captain of the defense, and most most considerably the quarterback of the defense, because he's the guy that has to see everything. He's got to line everybody up. He's got to know whose strengths are what, so what he can expect from any person, what they do, the things, the little nuances that they show in order to tell what it is that they're doing. So it's kind of like the like catchers making the best managers. Why? Because they're the ones that literally have to be aware of everything while they're out there at any given moment.
No, I hear you. I hear you for sure.
And so, I mean, like I said, we all know what it is. And while he may not have been the head coach, let's not act like he hadn't been there for a year and a half before he took over.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
And so it's not like he was brand new to this and had no ideas, and suddenly, oh, here you go, I need you to go out here and do this. He earned the respect of everybody because he told them he knew what to do, and he came damn close to pulling it off if he hadn't gotten screwed over by the refs. Now, I don't know if they got everything that they needed to have happened to happen, but they had a legit chance of squeaking in if they hadn't got fucked.
Yeah, I'm the Jack Jones. Yeah, man, that was unfortunate.
There's more than just that. The pass interference that kept the drive going, which was like, you got to be kidding me. They've been climbing Devontae like a ladder, like they were going for piggyback rides, and you're going to call a pass interference on the ball that got thrown out of bounds that at best was a bang bang play.
Yeah, it was weak. It was weak. And this is the losses that we're talking about. You know, I've seen people say that we should have beaten the Colts and all this shit, but at the end of the day, I mean, Colts have a better record than the Raiders. They finished the season with a better record than the Raiders, and they won the head-to-head. So I don't really know. I don't really know what supports that, you know. And even saying that, the game, like you said, it was decided by wishy-washy penalties. Like, that could have easily just not been called, and Raiders could have easily walked away with a win. So it wasn't like they dominated the Raiders in any facet. It just happened to fall that way, and that's fine. But I don't really understand why fans act like that was a game that I thought the Raiders were going to win, and I'll be the first to say that. I remember saying that I don't see the Raiders losing that game, in fact. But it wasn't because I thought that was a game like the Raiders are just going to manhandle the Colts because they're just such a better team or anything. It was just, I felt that way. I felt the energy given the way momentum was shifting, that the Raiders were just going to go out there firing, and it was going to be a Raiders win. But I was wrong about that. But I don't see it as a game the Raiders they're such a better team, and they should have won and all this shit. It's just whatever.
I'll say more than anything, that was probably more of a game that the rookiness of Aiden O'Connell shined through. And while he's done a miraculous job of not turning over the football, he's also left a lot of meat out there on the bones and some things to be desired. And it's not even about things to be desired as much as it's a confirmation of a statement that I made at the beginning of the year when I said that the man is a monument in the pocket. They're not you can move a statue. That monument is there to stay. You build around the monument. And it's not there. There's while I will say that I did see him successfully execute a bootleg in the game against the Broncos, that's probably because I and everybody else in the world was like, is he really running?
The touchdown to Devon.
Yeah, wow, he's running. Like, wow, he's running. You see this? Is somebody supposed to chase him? Because we totally have not accounted for this at all.
And you could tell by the result of the play, everybody was surprised.
Like, somebody got to go get him. Oh, shit. Oh, nope. Yeah, now Devontae's open behind you. Touchdown. Black team for 6, you bitch.
Let me just say, too, that drive, I remember that drive very well. That was easily the best drive as a whole in Aiden O'Connell's young career. I mean, that was a fantastic drive by him. If we get more of that, if there was more of that throughout the season, I don't even know if we'd be talking like, well, Raiders need this quarterback and do this and do that and go out and get your quarterback. I mean, I believe that they should, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, if that was consistent throughout the year, we saw more of that, we probably wouldn't be here today talking about that. Like, Raiders need a quarterback, need to go after him, because that job was fantastic.
That was everything that you could hope for more. And on one hand, you could say that he's capable of it. You could also say that he's a rookie, so he has the opportunity to continue to get better and put together more stuff like that. But I would also caution against that, because I saw more than a few plays where if he could just step up and take off and run, there was opportunities there that were not realized.
Certainly, man. Certainly, certainly. Aiden O'Connell is very, very limited. His skill set is definitely in a box, and with Aiden O'Connell, you get what you get. You know.
Yeah, you certainly do. There's and again, now on one hand, I'll say that he's certainly put up some solid production in terms of this rookie class, which I got to tell you has been rather underwhelming. But they said it would be. The incoming rookie class is supposed to be much better, which is why they need to go ahead and do whatever it is that they need to do to move up and get their guy. In the case of C.J. Stroud, you've seen firsthand what it means to be able to go up and get your guy, and just how much of an impact that'll have for your team.
Oh, certainly, man. Certainly. And when you get the parts clicking, because we talked about this last week, the Raiders, you look at their roster from top to bottom. I know there's some guys that they might lose, but overall, you look at their roster and every position group, there is one single position, just one that sticks out like a sore thumb. Just one. And it is the quarterback position. It just so happens to be the most important position that you can have on a team. And you go all in for it.
Yeah, it's at that point. That's really the only thing left that you have to go for. You've gotten a massive amount of unknown production out of Malcolm Koonce. He gave you everything that you were expecting from Chandler Jones and Tyree Wilson put together. You slide Tyree Wilson inside. Now all of a sudden you've got a hellion. Now, I would actually like to see what he would probably do as the 5-7 technique in a 3-4. I think that would probably be the best position for him. And him and Max can do damage, or him and Malcolm can do damage. But what you've gotten out of him from sliding inside and utilizing the length of his frame has been tremendous. Everything that you would have hoped to got and more. And if he can put on some weight, add some more muscle, he can be a force as a 3 technique.
Oh, I totally agree. And especially with the inside of the line, which nobody could have expected to be as good as it is, with John Jenkins and Adam Butler, both who have far outseeded every single expectation. That's credit to Patrick Graham too, especially, those guys that I just named, they're both impending free agents, but you got to assume that they're going to bring one back. I would assume Adam Butler, because he's the younger one. He's 29, so he's climbing up there, but he's still relatively young, especially in comparison to John Jenkins, I think he's going to be 35 by the time the next season starts. But anyway, you keep those parts together more or less, and it just helps Malcolm Koonce. It helps the whole thing. And, the big thing with all of this is, please, for the love of God, do not let Patrick Graham go somewhere. You've seen the Chargers stuff, and that would just be heartbreaking, man, if you went to the Chargers. Just leave Patrick Graham, man. Let us have one defensive coordinator, one time.
You're gonna have to pay Patrick Graham. I don't see how that would be an issue, but it's not my money. If they offer him a head coaching job, then you have to, as difficult as that may be, you can only be happy for the man to be progressing in his career further like that. I mean, that is a high honor, and the fact that they would try to poach a division rival means that it just goes to show how highly they think about it.
Yeah, certainly.
And so
he deserves it for everything. I'm not saying like I hope he doesn't and he doesn't deserve it. Keep him here. No, he deserves it, man. He's been excellent.
He took that defense, and I want to say from the start of the season to the end of it, rose 20 points 20 positions from 26th all the way to 6th.
No, it's incredible, man. It's incredible. And the thing that I love is I've seen a lot of fans, especially, your best friend on this subject. I've seen them say, they've been waiting for a bad game, and versus the Colts, the defense wasn't bad. It just wasn't as exceptional as we've been accustomed to seeing, especially in the second half of the season. And those fans are saying, hey, look, I told you, look at the defense. I told you they weren't magnificent. It's like, dude, you waited so long to say that. Like, you had to wait so long to say that.
And for them to give up 23, and really it only should have been 20.
Like, you had to wait
8 weeks.
Almost 2 months. Yeah. Like, come on, man.
Fuck out of here with that weak ass shit. Nobody want to hear that shit.
Oh, man.
Weeks to come say that shit.
I mean, dude, last time I checked, if something holds true 1 out of 9 times, it doesn't hold true.
Colette, that's just a smidge over 10%. I think it's more like 11.
It's nothing, man. It's absolutely nothing.
We call that the error quotient or some shit like that. But again, I'm not gonna call. I saw the potential in this defense early. I felt like the mistakes that they were making were attention to details and bad tackling. And as long as they were tackling, they were being put in position to do exactly where they needed to be. And Patrick Graham, Ivy League. You remember the Ivy League comment?
Oh, of course.
Ivy League. Oh, Ivy League here. Well, Ivy League here looked like exactly what the fuck he was doing.
Oh, he looks Ivy League. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, the way that he got them boys playing, the way that they all bought in, the way that by the end of it they were all on the same page, striving for greatness together. Yeah, what more could you ask for?
No doubt, man. And to be honest with you, I've actually been very high on Patrick Graham even last year, because I know the defense wasn't always great, but I saw what he was doing and what he was trying to do, and it was very clear that what he wanted to do, although it might not have been working, it was very inventive and it was unique, and it was very clear that it could work, and he just didn't have his guys, which is understandable because he just came here, year one last year, and he obviously didn't have his guys. I mean, he's not even the head coach, so what are you going to do? You can't build the cake without the ingredients. So he did what he did, and it looked good. It looked promising, if nothing else. It didn't always have the best results, but it did look promising. And in the offseason, I had written many, many pieces about how I thought this defense was ready to take off. I mean, I'm talking like 2,000 word articles right and left on defense. I was very, very high on what they could be. Not even I expected them to be this good, mostly because of the linebacker core. I mean, the linebacker core, and that's linebacker coach Antonio Pierce. So, I could not have expected this linebacker core to be even a third as good as they've been. I mean, this linebacker core, it might have been the best unit on the defense this season, and I thought it was going to be the worst in the NFL, like in the entire NFL. And my God, man, they've been so dominant. Patrick Graham has been great.
If you had said that earlier in the year, I would have gone with that wholeheartedly. But in the course of the last 6 games, the defensive line has just been on a completely different level. And I know that's what we hoped to be getting when we brought in Rob Leonard from Baltimore to do just that, because we weren't getting enough out of our defensive line with Frank Oakham. And he did everything that he was supposed to do and some. And the way that the defensive line had taken over, like you said, the John Jenkins, the Adam Butlers, the Bilal Nichols, when you see the big fellas in the middle scoring touchdowns, you are doing something right.
Oh, certainly, man, certainly.
And what they've been, and it was because it used to be maxing 10 other guys. It's not maxing 10 other guys anymore.
I agree, man. I agree. I've been trying hard to advocate against that all season, and it's finally, I think it's at the point where most of Raider Nation finally sees how absolutely ridiculous and frankly insulting to the rest of the team. That narrative was.
And I wrote a lengthy article about the horrificness of the linebacking core, and I'll be the first to extend my apologies and say I was wrong.
Oh man, I couldn't have been more wrong about the linebacker unit, and I couldn't be more happy to say I was more wrong about it.
That's it right there. That part, I happily say that I was wrong.
Yeah, and we go back to what we said earlier about all these teams want the Raiders coaches and general managers, front office, whatever. And for the first time in forever, not only that, we're like, please don't do this. And that especially stands true for the defensive coordinator, because the last handful we've had, I mean, the last probably 7 or so, it was like, I'll pay you to take this guy off the team. What are you talking about? And now it's like, I'll pay you not to do it. Come on, leave him alone.
Man, there've been some bad defensive coordinators. I think that they got rid of Gus earlier than they really had to. I didn't necessarily think anything was wrong with the defense aside from he needed different personnel.
Zero diversity is my only problem. Like that's why it trended downward, because teams saw it and they saw nothing else was coming. Same packages every play, which if it works, it works. And the Raiders defense was certainly average, which for at the time of the Raiders defense, they were average. They were fucking amazing. So there's that.
No, I get it, but you weren't getting enough out of everybody else, and that was ultimately the issue. It's not that the defense was bad; you just weren't getting anything out of the front line aside from Max.
Yeah, certainly.
And that is, if your spear is not sharp at the point of attack, nobody has to fear it.
I agree.
But moving on into the future now, before we wrap this up out of here. The future is pretty much a 2-man showdown between Antonio Pierce and Jim Harbaugh.
See, this is what I've been waiting for right here, man. If you see me smiling all week out on the streets, you seen a smile on my face, because I've been waiting for this moment right here to talk my shit about Jim Harbaugh and Antonio Pierce. But I'm gonna let you have the floor first.
Oh no, by all means, I want to hear this.
All right, so on Twitter, you see, I'm not really an engagement guy on Twitter. Well, what I mean is when people talk on Twitter and they give their opinions, when I disagree, most of the time, I respect that it's their opinions, and I might think that they're totally wrong, and I might think that I don't know how a human can come up with the opinion you just had, but I respect a lot of people, and even when I don't agree with their opinions, I let them have their opinions, because they're opinions, and everybody, if you don't have your opinions, you don't hold on to your own opinions, then who are you? You're not yourself, you're somebody else. So I respect opinions even when I disagree with them. Anyway, it's time to debunk all of this absolute bullshit that I hear about Jim Harbaugh on a daily basis, that I see on Twitter on a daily basis. And that is this discussion that he's a winner and he's this and he's that and he doesn't need X amount of guys to do it. He can win with whoever. I am so sick of this. So sick of this narrative. He's clearly not a loser, but to say he's a winner, I think where? And people will point to the Super Bowl. They'll point to the national championship. I'll touch on all of this very quickly. The thing with the Super Bowl run, as great as it was, I talked about this last week. This was a case of integrating something the NFL had not seen before, and it was working. And that's great. When that happens, that's why teams hire you, because you have something that the league hasn't seen before, and you take the league by storm. That's why these young guys get jobs, even though Jim Harbaugh wasn't exactly a young guy at the time. But still, that's why guys get jobs. And it worked. It got them to the Super Bowl. Then it got them nothing. It got them nothing at all very quickly, because it was very easy to figure out, and Jim Harbaugh could not adjust. And that's fine. And he couldn't adjust because that's his gimmick, that's his shtick, and that's him. And that's cool. It got them to a Super Bowl, and that's it. Then he goes to Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan. This narrative that Jim Harbaugh can win with whoever is just absolute bullshit. We look at his quarterbacks that he's had at Michigan. They're all the same type of player. talked about this last week again, and I'm going to talk about it again. They're all the same type of player. And this player is a guy who is, pretty athletic, quarterback I'm speaking of, very athletic and quite shifty. And, by all accounts, their athleticism with their legs far out exceeds their arm talent. And, I'm going on this rant about how he can't win with anybody and they just won a national championship. So it's kind of ironic. I get it. But the thing with Jim Harbaugh is he is supposed to be, in theory, just you hear his name and you're supposed to think of this guy who has his own shtick and it works and it's his thing. And, it's so successful. Michigan is not beating teams with their quarterback, man. Michigan has never been beating teams with their quarterback. And I'm a diehard Michigan fan. I wish they were. JJ McCarthy, we'll talk about JJ McCarthy a little later too if we have the time. He's not a high-end talent. And, you could tell by watching the tape. And I get it. He's been super efficient as any Michigan quarterback in my lifetime. And that's a lot because of Jim Harbaugh. But they're not beating teams with their quarterback. They're hardly beating teams with their running game, although their running game is clearly their bread and butter on offense. I mean, that's really not even close. But what Michigan does and what they've always been is a defensive team. My entire for as long as I've really started being invested with Michigan football to that level anyway, which is 10 something years. But defensive team all since Harbaugh's arrival. And I'm going to say this, the bit that I brought up earlier about a college coach being vastly different in their tasks from an NFL coach, it's recruiting. And Jim Harbaugh deserves that credit for recruiting this top end defensive talent year in and year out and keeping that defense intact. And he deserves that credit, but that's not a thing you do in the NFL. So when everybody talks about Michigan is doing this, Michigan's doing that at the NFL with Jim Harbaugh, they're doing that because of aspects that is not required and is not going to happen in the NFL. Jim Harbaugh is not going to have to recruit top defensive guys. And even when he does, he's not going to coach them. That's Patrick Graham, who's been doing a fantastic job at that anyway, who might not even be the head coach if Jim Harbaugh comes, simply because that might not be the guy that Jim Harbaugh wants as his defensive coordinator. And why would you break that up? It doesn't make sense to me. You look at the last two games, being the playoff games that Michigan won and to ultimately win the national championship. JJ McCarthy, as efficient as he was and as, solid as he was when he was asked to throw the ball, if you think they won because of JJ McCarthy, either of those games, if you think they won because of their offense as opposed to their defense, I don't know what the fuck you were watching. I have no idea what the fuck you were watching. And Jim Harbaugh is supposed to be this offensive guy who comes in and, dominates with his offense and he's a winner. Oh my God, his offense just wins games. No, it does not. No, it does not. Stop the bullshit. It has never won games. Perhaps it won games that 1 year with the 49ers when they went to the Super Bowl, which again, they did not win because Jim Harbaugh's offense is not a winning offense. It's very gimmicky. When it works, it works. And, it's already shown that it doesn't work anymore. Even at the college level, it's shown it doesn't work anymore. Jim Harbaugh is supposed to be an offensive coach who has a great defense, which, again, I give him credit for recruiting and putting around him at Michigan. That's him that's done that. But that's not his thing. He's not a defensive guy. And he's winning not because of his offense that he's supposed to be this guru with, not because of his offense in any regard. And nobody can possibly think that. Nobody can possibly watch Michigan games and think that. And that is what I got to say about Jim Harbaugh.
Spirited, very, very spirited, very accurate. Because I could tell you honestly and it's not even necessarily Jim Harbaugh's offense anymore. It's Sharon Moore's. And one of the big things that I said, okay, so if Jim Harbaugh is going to be the coach of the Raiders, then so be it. Is Sharon Moore coming with him? Because if Sharon Moore is not coming, then now we have a large problem. Because like you said, the thing about Harbaugh that he loves to do is he loves to have a read option type situation, which now, quite frankly, all of the college players are used and the pro players are used to playing and dealing with in some capacity. And the run game is based off overloads and having more blockers at the line of scrimmage than you can employ on the defensive front. And if you can get to a point where you are doubling, you have twice as many blockers as you do defensive linemen, then at some point you're going to incur huge holes in your defense, which is what Michigan was able to exploit. Now, in the pros, you're not going to be able to overwhelm an entire defense like that, not spread out like that without any threat of the passing game. which is the issue, the limitations that JJ McCarthy has. And while, as we spoke about this off air, he's able to be efficient and make throws directly in front of him, which are the easiest throws for a quarterback to make. If you ask him to go outside the numbers or be able to get off of his first read, I believe that he is going to have quite a bit of issues.
Oh, certainly, man. And I like that we're talking about JJ because I wanted to talk about JJ a little bit, but I'll let you, that's probably going to be another lengthy rant from me. So I'm going to let you finish.
Okay. And so I'll move to this, and then you can finish us off and take us out. AP said before I move on from Harbaugh, there is no good reason for Harbaugh to leave Michigan. He is first 15-0 team, first time they've won a national championship in 26 years. Say, man's getting a statue outside of Ann Arbor. He is football god in the state of Michigan. No reason there's not, he won't be lacking for money. The alumni will make sure he gets paid. There's no reason for him to leave Michigan whatsoever. Now, that being said, we're going to move on and come back to AP. Never in the history of, no, let me walk that back. Never since John Madden have you seen an entire stadium screaming an interim head coach's name. And Madden was never an interim coach, but never have you seen an entire stadium screaming an interim head coach's name as he jogged off the field. Never have you seen a coach that has had unanimous support in the Raiders organization from the players and the media. I have yet to run across a single solitary media person who says that Antonio Pierce should not be the coach of the Raiders. Everybody who's watched this team, everybody who's watched the Raiders knows who the leader of the Raiders is. And the sooner Mark Davis realizes that, the sooner he can return to prominence, and this will work out. I can get to everybody's hesitation, trepidation on, this, that, and the third, but I'm telling you, I have never seen everything come together for the silver and black quite the way that it has so quickly with Antonio Pierce. And this is without any of the customary advantages of an offseason, a training camp, a draft, free agency, or even having your own guys. I cannot wait to see what changes he would make to make this team better to his staff. I hope that he's able to keep the defensive staff together, because I would love for them to get one more year and just a little bit more talent for them to work with. But this man is a Raider at heart, is a leader of men, is a leader of guys who are not like everybody else, who knows what it means to be an LA Raider, the last heyday of the Raiders. And what he's brought back to this organization, and what he's brought back to this fan base is the Raiders mystique that everybody remembered. And if you take that away from and go in a different direction, then everybody will finally have been right about Mark Davis and say that he needs to give up the team because he forgot what it meant to be a Raider.
Yep. And the thing about Antonio Pierce is that we have seen him adjust in games, and we've seen him win from adjustments already. We've seen that. As Cat Williams would say, in the last 100 years, Hollywood has never heard a story of Jim Harbaugh adjusting in a game and winning it. Not once. Not in the NFL. Not after the Super Bowl run. He couldn't adjust. He couldn't even adjust during the Super Bowl when he had that big lead and then they lost. He didn't adjust after it when they started losing every and any game. He didn't adjust at Michigan because they were never behind. In fact, crazy enough, when Michigan is down in the fourth quarter, I believe it is, they're like 2-1, which, is a good winning record regardless. But, I mean, that's just to show that he never adjusts because he just doesn't. And they've already lost when they have, in just 3 games, no less, when he has to. But Jim Harbaugh is not good at adjusting either. And Antonio Pierce has already proved in, what has he played, 9 games? that he is superior at adjusting. He's already adjusted more in 9 games than Jim Harbaugh has, and adjusted efficiently, I should say. He's already done that better in 9 games than Jim Harbaugh has done in his whole career. This Jim Harbaugh is a winner stuff is just such bullshit. And, when people point at the college and they're like, well, he's won in college, blah, 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 blah. I've already talked about how it's different. But also, you look at guys like the literal GOAT of college, Urban Meyer. You look at Nick Saban. Nick Saban wasn't exactly awful in the NFL, but he was clearly notches down from what he was in college. I mean, clearly. And Urban Meyer was like, people say he's the worst head coach of all time in the NFL. And, he was fantastic in college. He owned Michigan. He owned Harbaugh. In fact, he owned Jim Harbaugh, the very guy who might be the worst NFL coach of all time, owned Jim Harbaugh in college. So there you have it. Anyway, I want to go to J.J. McCarthy really quick because Michigan and Raiders have a lot in the media. There's a lot of intertwining, not just Harbaugh, but J.J. McCarthy, especially if Jim Harbaugh does ultimately come. Is J.J. going to come with him? I'm not going to talk about that, though. I'm just going to talk about J.J. McCarthy because a lot of Raider fans want him. J.J. McCarthy, he is a very efficient quarterback, and he's efficient because he doesn't make too many mistakes. He's kind of like Aiden O'Connell in the sense that he's a coach's dream. He's going to listen to what the coaches say, and he's not going to try to play hero ball. He's not going to try to make the big throw every play. He's not going to try to make the big throw at all because, quite frankly, he doesn't have the arm talent to do it. But, he doesn't make many mistakes, and I said he's like Aiden O'Connell in that sense, but, he's better. He offers more. He's a lot more well-rounded because he's very quick. He knows when to escape the pocket. He has good pocket awareness. But Aiden O'Connell is a lot better at one thing than J.J. McCarthy, which is throwing outside the numbers. Actually, during his draft class, I thought Aiden O'Connell was the best in the entire class at throwing outside the numbers. And J.J. McCarthy, I don't know if I've ever seen one single pass outside of the numbers where I was like, yeah, that was a good pass outside the numbers. Because you said it before, and I said it, that his throw that he's so efficient with is the throw right over the middle. And I'm not saying that as in the middle of the field. I'm saying whatever is directly in front of him. If it's outside the numbers and it's a good throw, it's probably because he bootlegged to that side of the field and the guy that he's throwing to happens to be directly in front of him because he bootlegged. J.J. McCarthy, there's this narrative around him from Raider fans, presumably ones who haven't watched a lot of Michigan games as I have, that he is this guy who just goes out there, lights up the world, and wins football games. I go back to what I said about Jim Harbaugh's offense and about how if you watch Michigan games, you will see that is never happening because J.J. McCarthy is not that guy because Jim Harbaugh cannot execute that kind of offense, so he never has that type of guy. J.J. McCarthy is not that type of guy. He is a game manager, which is not an insult. It is not an insult at all. But he's not the guy that's going to elevate your team. He didn't do that at Michigan, and he's not going to do that in the NFL.
No, he's not. And honest and truthfully, that's why I'm not very high on JJ McCarthy. I'd prefer that Jim Harbaugh stayed in college because the scheme that he employs is very easy. I'm not going to say that it's very easy to defend, but with certain formational and personnel adjustments, it becomes a lot easier to stop that, especially if you key on stopping the pulling guards instead of the running back. Everything goes to shit. But that'll all be conversations for further down the line because we're almost out of time here. So I'm Phil. That's Alex. This is the AP Cast. And everybody, God bless. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in.